we can all relax and cool off now. We are deeply honored today to have with us Mrs. Lao Russell, accompanied by her husband, Dr. Walter Russell, who together created the lovely Juana Noah, a shrine of beauty near Waynesboro, Virginia. Together they have mastered the science of man and are now teaching it to others. Mrs. Russell is an author, philosopher, sculptor, lecturer, and teacher. Today she comes to us as both a lecturer and a teacher. She has chosen for her theme, Woman's Role in the Universe. Mrs. Russell.
I want to tell you first how very happy I am to be here, to have the privilege of talking to you all. I don't think I've ever been anywhere where there's such a wonderful atmosphere of love as you have here in this church. Of course, the reason for that is the wonderful leadership here. You have a leader here who expresses love in everything he says, in everything that he does for you here. Another wonderful thing that I noticed here are the married couples. And since I'm going to talk to you today on women's place in the universe, that going back to the couples is the most important thing of all. For creation is made up of men and women. In fact, creation is just man and woman. There isn't anything else in all of the world but man and woman. And our world today is what man and woman has made it. When we look out upon the world today, and we see the hate and the fears and the greeds, isn't it time that men and women looked into themselves to see what they have done to create such a world? For we have indeed created the world that we are now living in. I was very happy to hear today the home that is to be made for delinquent children, or as the young lady said, pre-delinquent children. And how wonderful it was that a woman is helping to create such a home. You know, everything starts from our homes. The world is nothing but the world home, made up of mothers and fathers. Now, we've got to go back to the beginning of creation to realize the importance of man and woman to each other. God created men and women from the oneness of himself. He divided the one into pairs of equals and opposites. Remember, equal and opposite. Not 3/4 male and 1/4 female, but equal and opposite. Until we have a world where men and women are equal, we shall continue to have wars. You see, we've got to go right back to the jungle stage of man's unfolding, which was millions and millions of years ago. Not just a few thousand years ago. The dawn of consciousness was only 8,000 years ago. But man and woman goes back for millions and millions of years. In the old jungle days, men took life. They still take life. all of our problems are settled with the taking of life. And as long as we continue to take life, we shall have hate and fear and the misery that we have in our world today. The world has had a father, but it has never really had a mother. And so you can realize probably a little bit more how important women are in the world today, because we are truly on the brink of annihilation, self-annihilation. It's a terrific thought. There isn't a man and woman who thinks at all in the world today who doesn't realize that we have reached the brink when we may have no world at all. There's not a moment to lose. Everybody in the world, every man, woman, and child should work towards unity. And we shall never have unity in the world until we have the balance between men and women, because that's all the world is. God's creation is man and woman. God divided his one in everything in nature, in chemistry, in business, into pairs of opposites. He divided them into two in order that they will find their oneness in him again to create other fathers and mothers. But that isn't the end. The planting of the seed that makes a baby is not the end of sex. That's only the beginning. It's the universal sex principle that must go through everything in life, in every action, whether it's social, business, or any other transaction. It's got to have balance. And it can never have balance until men and women give birth to ideas together. It isn't giving birth just to bodies that men and women come together. The greatest ideas are given birth to from men and women mentally. And unless we have balance between married couples, mentally and spiritually, we shall always have wars. We shall always have inharmony in our homes. It starts in the home. In a home where men and women are balanced mentally, we'll have a wonderful home. There's happiness there. There's happiness for the children, there's happiness for the man, and there's happiness for the woman. But there must be first mental companionship. And I think that's one of the things that I have witnessed here in the few hours that we have been here, is a fostering of that mental companionship, that mental exchange of doing things together, creating things together. You're fortunate indeed to have such a wonderful community church. It truly is what the name implies. It's community living. That's what a lot of people thought that communism was. They misunderstood. A lot of idealistic people, I understand, have become involved in communism because they were looking really for community living. But they didn't find it there, because once more it was the master and the slave. And only when men and women have ideas and work them out together shall we have really good community life. Now, your part in a home, a woman's place in a home, is the most important thing, isn't it? A woman has to be a creator. She has to be a great executive. You know, so often people will dismiss it and say about a woman in a home, oh, she's just a housewife. You've heard it many times. Just a housewife. A housewife has to be everything. She has to be a wonderful manager. She has to be an executive. She has to be creative. She has to be an artist. She has to be a cook. She has to be a sweetheart. And think of that word sweetheart. Put it into 2 words. Every man wants a sweetheart. And every woman wants a sweetheart. A sweetheart means harmony, love. That's what we're all seeking. There isn't a man or woman on earth that isn't trying to find his way of finding happiness. Too often people think that they have to get into crowds, they have to have noise, they have to have something to satisfy their senses. If they have harmony in the home, they will stay home. The thing that we all want is to find someone with whom we feel comfortable. We all want to feel comfortable. That's why a home is the base for a world home of peace. Because if we don't have peace and happiness and comfort in our homes, we shall not have it in the world home. That's why a woman's place in a home is the most important thing that she can possibly do. Because as the man leaves the home and the children leave the home, so they go out into the world and they make other homes. And the older we get, the more we remember what our parents taught us. The little things. It's the little things in life that bring happiness, not the big things. In the home where a man shares with his wife, he brings home his business problems, and a woman should be helping in the business world. The man that can talk to his wife about business affairs is the successful man. If you look into the lives of any great man, you will find that somewhere there's a woman. It may be his mother, it may be his sister, it may be his friend, but it's better if it's his wife, because no one is more concerned with each other than a husband and wife. What happens to one happens to the other. So when we are mate choosing, it's important that we choose a mate that is mentally balanced with us. If we have mental and spiritual companionship, the physical will take care of itself. Children, we're speaking of juvenile delinquency. If we have juvenile delinquency today, it isn't the children that have given birth to that delinquency. It's our generation and the generation before us and the generation before that. The children are not to blame. It's the generations that have gone before. I think that mostly that has been done unknowingly, for people do not realize the importance of being alone, getting to know ourselves. That is what we teach our students above all else, to get to know your inner self. Because when you know yourself, you will know all people. But you never get to know yourself until you're really alone. Some people say, my child doesn't want to go out with other children. They want to stay home alone. I would be very happy if I had a child like that, because I would know that that child was going within. And within is where we find God. When Jesus was questioned as to when the kingdom of God would come, Jesus replied, "The kingdom of God cometh not through observation. The kingdom of God is within." He taught that over and over and over again. But how many people realize that they've got to go within to find God. They think of God way off somewhere up in the heavens. If they could only realize that every moment God is with them, working with them, waiting for that awareness, waiting to break that shell of awareness. That's why I wrote my book, God Will Work With You, But Not For You. God works with us when we know that He is within us, working with us. All of the power of the universe is ours when we become aware of it. I know many of you here have read the book that Glen wrote about my husband, Dr. Russell, the man who tapped the secrets of the universe. I don't think there's ever been a life, in fact I know there has never been a life that has exemplified better than my husband of working knowingly with God. I hope that many of you here can someday come to Swananoa and see the visual demonstration of what it means to work knowingly with God. As you know, Doctor is a painter, sculptor, scientist, architect, musician, and author, and tops in everything. But as I've often said to the students, when they say, well, we haven't done anything, it's 25% inspiration and 75% perspiration that makes a genius. It's hard work. So few people are willing to work hard. And children, especially, if you give them creative things to do, they'll work very hard with encouragement. And I think that women's role in the world today is to work as much as they can with young people, because the world is not changed overnight. We've been millions and millions of years getting to this stage where we're becoming aware that we have a mind as well as a body. In the past centuries and ages for millions of years, people have catered to their bodies, always their bodies, something for their bodies. Their minds, they've left alone. They haven't tried to unfold because they've been so drugged with the senses. You know, if Elvis Presley came to town here, you'd have thousands and thousands of people tearing each other apart to see this boy and hear this boy and get close to him. Isn't that a tragedy? And yet somebody comes with a wonderful message. Here in this church, there's so much. You'd think that there wouldn't be a space empty at any time, but because of the spiritual food that there is to be had here. I was chairman of the Boston Symphony Youth Concerts 10 years ago, just before I met Doctor. And I worked so hard to give culture to the people of the community. I formed 46 committees. And to try and raise a little money to give this beautiful symphony concerts to the children was very hard work. But if I could have announced that Elvis Presley was coming, it would have been easy to raise a lot of money. And that shows you the stage that mankind is in today. He's still very, very pagan. Man in the mass is still pagan. He kills, he cheats, he lies. He doesn't stop to think about his mind. He wants everything for the senses. Here, in this group here, I feel that there's so many who have a great message to give to others, to extend to others. You are the nucleus here that can extend your great knowing to so many communities, and it will be you, the women of the world, that will mother the world and will bring in a new age. You wouldn't be here, any of you, if you didn't have great awareness. But we've got to get it to the rest of the world, and we've got to get it there in time. We've got to get it into education. We have to bring to the world of education knowledge. We have not got higher knowledge in the world today. We have a great deal of information, but very little knowledge. That's why we wrote our home study course that is basically scientific. It's a consistent cosmogony that is teaching man God's ways and processes, not information to remember and repeat something that's been handed down for many years that is untrue, but cosmic knowledge directly from God. And God's cosmic knowledge is consistent. There is not an inconsistency in our home study course. And it's transforming lives. Probably we have more men students than women, which I think is very wonderful, because usually it's the women that are more interested in the spiritual things than men. But women were born to give to life. Men were born in the beginning to take from life. They had to take to survive. Way back in the jungle days, they had to kill to survive. And the pattern is in their seed to take, to kill, to survive. And the woman has now got to bring the spirituality of giving. She has to give to the world the knowledge that will bring the peace and happiness to the world that the whole world needs. Women like the woman today that was telling you of the home that they are building. There's so many things that women could do. But they've got to go out and do something about it. Giving money isn't enough. Giving money is only such a small part of it. It's the time that it takes to do these things. If people have a lot of money, they can give money. But it isn't money that's going to save this world. It's knowledge. It's the knowledge of God and knowledge of man and woman's place in this world, especially the part of women. Until we can get women working with men, with ideas, it will not be balanced. I don't know whether many of you realize that my book, God Will Work With You But Not For You, came out before the last election. And I was not aware of it until the other day, how many students had sent copies of that book to President Eisenhower. And today, we have the first woman acting secretary. They had 36 women speaking, for the Republicans. And someone in Washington told me that the influence had come from reading that book. So, you see, it gets in even though we're not aware of it always. But many of the congressmen have read that book. And today we have more women in government than we have ever had before. And they're doing things. They're proving themselves. I heard a program this morning while we were dressing on television. And for the first time, they have many women in the stock market, in various jobs at the New York Stock Exchange. Of course, I didn't agree with the remark of the hostess. She said that business was the most important thing in America. Depends what business. Certainly not commercial business. The most important business is spiritual business. Because it's first the spiritual and then the material. And that is the thing that we've got to bring to the world. We've got to bring the spirituality of women into the business world. We've got to have balanced transactions in the business world. And balanced transactions will come when men and women work together and give ideas to the world that hold the spiritual as well as the material values. Business can never succeed unless each side has a balanced transaction, has a balanced deal. The buyer and the seller. If you go and buy a pair of shoes and you don't get good value for your money, you don't go back again, do you? But if you get good value, you go back again. Always there must be balance. My voice is almost gone. Just before we came, I had been doing a great deal of talking, and I did not know whether I would be able to come or not, and to talk to you. So Doctor said at the last minute that he would come. And I wondered if you'd like to come up and finish talking for me, because my voice is almost gone. I know you'd like that, wouldn't you? And then we'll both answer questions afterwards. Well, give me a little rest and then I'll talk again. Well, we've just finished a very important book. It's taken Doctor and I a whole year to write this book. You will be hearing very much about it. But when it comes out, perhaps you'll realize why my voice has gone a little, because I've been working 18 hours a day for the past year, and we have a student here from Charlottesville that can tell you, Mrs. Fairley. Won't you stand up, Margaret? Mrs. Fairley came all the way from Charlottesville to come and hear us here today, and she can tell you that I have been working 18 hours a day for the past year on this new book, and I haven't seen anyone or done anything, and I've been working so hard the last 2 weeks, but I didn't want to disappoint you all.
Margaret Fairley, poet, laureate of Virginia. Would you stay right here then?
Yes, dear. I'll just let me drink something. This is the man who tapped the secrets of the universe, and I might tell you how Doctor and I met, so that you know how it is that nothing happens by chance.
And the greatest secret...
You know the little book, The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe by Glen was given to me in March of 1946. And I'll tell you, would you like to know how we met? Well, someone gave me this little book, and I read it, and I knew, deep inside me, that Walter Russell was waiting for me to call him. Now that may sound strange to you, although you must have had experiences yourself that you couldn't believe. But that is actually what happened to me. So after reading the book through 3 times, I telephoned him to New York. I didn't know what I was going to say. I had never called anybody in my life before in this way. And I said to him, I've just finished this little book about you, and I find myself expressed for the first time in my life. I would very much like to see you. And he said, well, I would very much like to see you. He said, there's something in your voice that I recognize. I have heard it within me for years. Can I see you tomorrow? And I laughed and I said, why no, I'm in Boston. And he said, well, if you're in Boston, you don't have to come to New York to see me. I'm coming to Boston to see you. And he came. And that is how we came together, and we have worked together as one ever since. So that's how fate unfolds, how destiny unfolds. And that we're here today is all part of God's great plan, I am sure. Because I feel here, from the moment we came here, I felt a great love among everyone. And I feel among all of you here some very great messengers. You've got a great purpose on earth. And to find your purpose on earth is fulfillment. And if we can get this new knowledge, love, the knowledge of what love really is, tonight we're going to talk about the science of love. And I think if people could understand more what love really was, and what we mean to each other, in each other, and through each other, then we would have the happiness that we're all trying to find. but Doctor and I have now worked together for 10 years. And in that time, we've written several books together and a home study course, and we've created a shrine of beauty on the top of a mountain in Virginia, where I hope many of you can come and visit us one day. And if any of you come, will you please let us know that you're there, and we'll take you upstairs so that you can see where we live. We're not open to the general public upstairs, but I would like you to see what we have created there through coming together, because I feel you're all part of us.
Well, I think perhaps if the greatest secret in the universe that one can discover is how to find a balanced mate. Romance possibly is the essence of God's division of himself of his father-motherhood into fathers and mothers, as Lao said. That leaves a strain and a tension, that division, that can only be satisfied by one thing. And we have that one word for it, which is romance, but it's a very inclusive word. Romance and love and happiness being the top of it, and the bottom of it being the word sex. Now, in the message that you say Lao, the world knows her as Lao. The message which Lao is really giving to the world as a living philosophy, which possibly mated with my majoring in science, or I don't like even use the word science. I like to say to people that God intended that we shall know our universe, and that when we know our universe, we'll know God. But the great message is that word, an understanding of that word sex, as she spoke to you about a little while ago. She said sex does not mean just the planting of a seed for a baby or a bear cub or for an oak tree. It's the continuity, that's the beginning. The continuity of that has another word for it. Motherhood, fatherhood. God divided his father-motherhood oneness into males and females, to fathers and mothers for one purpose, of uniting in his oneness to create more fathers and mothers, to unite to create more fathers and mothers, and so on ad infinitum down through the millions and millions of years in which the unfolding seed of man, the unfolding idea of man should come into fruition and complete the idea of man as a body, which was completed when the physical body had matured to the idea that God had in mind to create a physical body to manifest the idea of God in man. Then awareness of God came in the dawn of consciousness. And man knew he had a mind. For the first time, he could create. For the first time, he floated on a log, and he began to think that if he cut a hole in the log, he could sit in it, and then if he stuck a paddle out, he could row in it, and then a sail for it, and a boat, and a flame, and a wheel. And gradually the awareness of God the Creator in man has come to this stage that we are now in, which is a very advanced stage from the 8,000 years ago, but a very primate stage as compared with what it will be when man knows God in him more. a very primate stage, because if you would just believe it, that the human race is still in its intellectual infancy. We know very little. Our senses have told us a lot of things. Our senses have talked to our body a great deal, and told us many things which are not so, because the senses are very easily deceived by effects of motion. But the little things, as Lao said, the little things that are so important, how man discovers God awareness in him, why the farmer, in her book, the farmer is planting seed. The farmer is putting potato seeds in the ground. And he knows, because he's giving service to the ground, he knows that he's working with God, and God is working with him. And he knows that the more service he gives to nature, which is God, the more service and love that he gives out from himself, the more of its exact kind God will give back to him. And that is the great, strong message of that book. The slow, gradual discovering of oneself. You will find a wonderful chapter in Dr. Burkhart's book, The Freedom to Be Oneself, that self-discovery, and that is solely what our New University is for the discovering of that light that is within oneself. So if you will only bear in mind that the unfolding God awareness in us begins and ends in father motherhood, not sex lovers, not physical expression of sex, not the planting of the seed. Does the bear cub not have a mother to nurture it, to feed it, to watch over it till it's 2 years old? Then it has to leave the nest, and the mother abandons it. It's on its own. But the mother has given everything she has of herself to make another bear cub have the qualities that she had. So motherhood and fatherhood means the giving to one's creation that which they have in themselves. They can give no more than that, because no one can give more of himself than he has to give. And the greater his God awareness, the greater he can give that to his children. And the greater a community like this unfolds in its spiritual awareness, and a community manifests the equality of father-motherhood that makes balanced mates and makes a balanced home, the quicker our civilization will become a balanced civilization and express the love that is given out from father-motherhood, the balanced, equal giving out of father-motherhood. And Leo also said, am I talking too long?
No.
Leo said equal father-motherhood, and she also said in all creation, not just men and women, all creation, that is God makes is males and females. The elements of matter just as well as men and women. The trees, the foliage, the flowers are all male and female. In the chemical elements, sodium is male and chlorine is female. And they'll make perfectly balanced mates. Perfectly balanced, they'll stay together happy forever afterward. But there's another one in the chlorine group, say we call bromine or iodine. Let that little blonde bromine come into sodium's family and chlorine, they will not be happy. They're not balanced, but chlorine will come in and out of the window, bromine will go. It's nature. They have to. And the humans do the same thing. If they do not find balanced mates, the other little balanced mates someday will come in, and perhaps there's a great many mistakes made there also. Read Barry's What Every Woman Knows, and you'll know what I mean by that. But the greatest possible thing to do is to find a balanced mate and then together work equally and never think of it from the point of view of the physical expression alone, the sex physical expression. Think of that only as the beginning of creation, and the continuity of that is not sex, it's father-motherhood, it's creation, it's being the creator of all things.
And by that we mean it isn't always necessary that it's husband and wife. I think a lot of people feel, especially women who have never married, they will often say, well, do you have to get married? We don't have to marry to have mental mating. We can have a mental mating with someone else's husband. It's still a sex interchange because it's male and female. The thing that the world has never realized is that every interchange is a sex interchange. Mental interchange is just as much, in fact, it's a stronger sex interchange than probably the physical interchange. It's idea. Wonderful ideas have been given to the world by men and women that have not been physically mated, but are mentally mated. You know, when Doctor and I are working on anything together, this book that we've just finished, it's almost 400 pages long. And perhaps I shouldn't say it, but it is a terrific book, mostly, of course, because of Doctor's scientific knowledge. But it's a tremendous book. But when we were working on that, we'd often remark, it was almost like a ball going back and forth like this. One would have a sentence, the other would have a sentence, and then we would find the best way of putting that so that somebody else would understand what we were trying to give to the world. And it was, you could almost feel it. It was like a ball on a piece of elastic. It would go back and forth like this. And from it, we would get so excited when the ultimate paragraph was completed. Because in all of our books, those of you who have read our books know that we don't have any sentences that don't mean anything in them. Every sentence must mean something. Many of the readers say that students say when they're reading them, that they start underscoring them, and then they find that practically every sentence is underlined, so they give up. But a good book should be like that. Dr. Burkhart's book is like that. We only read a few paragraphs last night, here and there, and we said, what a wonderful book this is. What knowledge there is in this book. Those things are priceless. Those are the things that will make a richer world. Not the Elvis Presleys and people like that. Good literature, good books, good philosophy. That is what we need more than anything else today. Things that will make people go within themselves and think. The great trouble with our world is that people don't think things through. If they would only think things through, we wouldn't be in this terrible mess that we are in our world today. You know, Russia is full of fathers and mothers too. We're all apt to condemn the other fellow, but we're all part of the other fellow. If we could see from each one of us here, there's a flux thread of light that joins each and every one of us. If people really understood their oneness with each other they would never hurt each other in the way that they do. Not only with actions, but with thoughts. Unkind thoughts. And the only person it really hurts is the one who has the thought. Because unless we accept a hurt, you remember in The Little Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, someone said to Doctor, "Have you ever known defeat?" And he said, "No, I've never known defeat because I've never accepted defeat." You have to accept defeat to know defeat. It matters not what happens to us. If we don't accept it, if someone tries to hurt us, we are only hurt if we accept the hurt. But we can't be hurt if we don't accept it. But what a wonderful world it would be if everybody really lived the brotherhood of man principle. And they never will until they realize how they're all one and why they're all one. That's what I tried to give out in my book. Everyone can help. Every good book that's written helps, because one is ready for one way of giving it, another is ready for another way of giving it. Margaret is giving it with her poetry. She's giving it out in her way. Maybe some of you here are giving it out in other ways. But everyone has got to start doing something about it if we're going to keep our world at all. There isn't anyone here that could not go out and extend himself to 100 people. And you imagine those 100 people extending to another 100 and to another 100. But it's knowledge we've got to extend, not just words. Because it's only knowledge of who man is and what he is and what he's here for that is going to change this world. I said to Doctor one night, in the Bible it says the world could change in the twinkling of an eye. It could change in the twinkling of an eye if everybody would change. But first, every man and woman on earth has to live by the golden rule and really try to bring the brotherhood of man into being. But that's the only way that the world will change in the twinkling of an eye. God isn't sitting upstairs somewhere waiting for man to get in such a big mess that he can take over. If man gets in such a big mess this time, he's only got to drop some more hydrogen bombs and there will be no planet. All of the money in the world isn't going to save man the next time. There's only one thing that can save us this time, and that is knowledge. Knowledge of who man is and what he is, and to do something about it. He's got to know what his universe is. He's got to know what makes the universe work the way it does. He's got to know what the atom is. He's got to know everything about the universe before he stops destroying his universe. He's destroying it now. Even the bombs that have been let off up to this period, we don't know what's going to come from the fallout. In 5 or 6 years, we shall know a lot more than we know now. But there are thousands of people today dying from leukemia and bone cancer and various blood diseases that they don't know what they are, because man has let loose in this universe the death principle from the hydrogen bombs. Oh, yeah. Yes. 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 My doctor said I'll leave you and he will talk to you about God will work with you, but not me.
All right. Well, I just want to say one thing about these 2 books. God Will tells you the progressive stages that a man in his unfolding has to go through to have God awareness. The first stage being genius, the next cosmic consciousness, and the next, on top of that, being Christ consciousness. That is the valuable thing there for so to know yourself. In the other book which is coming out, that is just full of new knowledge, knowledge that has never been known on earth before in respect to our universe. The universe and its secrets have been called the majestic riddle. This book is the solution of that riddle. It tells you things that you wanted to know and never have known before. For instance, a great many people say, where do I go when I die? And that's not a difficult thing to answer and when one knows one's universe. But the book does tell you where you go when you die. The book does tell you what gravitation is, and how you come into being, what electricity is, and what constitutes our universe, and just how God creates it. And those are the things in those two books which this generation sadly needs to make a different kind of a world based upon one thing: balance. The law of love, which is balance, equal giving and regiving. That is the law of love. Matehood, father-motherhood, equal sharing, equal giving and regiving. That is what those two books are based upon, and many people have said that God's will is the basis for a new civilization. Many important people have, and I think you'll find when the new book comes out that we have both written together, you will find that people will have an entirely different understanding of the nature of the universe and the way God created it. I hope you'll read both of them.
Would you like to give them a hand? I just want to say one word to you. Some years ago, a pamphlet came into my hands entitled "A Man Who Tapped the Secret of the Universe." It was written by Glen, and I was so intrigued by it. We got many copies. The young people read it with great interest. And then I said, I'm going to New York to meet this man who had tapped the secret of the universe. One thing it said about him, that he never got tired. He just got sleepy. And I think maybe some of you have heard that in the meantime, because I know that to be true. Then, 5, 6, 7 years ago, one Sunday night, I was called to a home in Grandview, the Gibson home down on Lincoln Road. And here was Dr. Russell, this man I was going to New York to see. And so I never had to make the trip because I met him at the Gibson home and was deeply impressed by some of the things that I not only read from Glen Clark, but some of the things that I caught from him and sensed that night. And then, again, he sort of moved out of my reach until Eleanor Hoover told me that Lao, his wife, was coming. Now, some of us had an opportunity last night to get into the deep mind of them in an intimate group. So I'm sure that if you knew more about the unusual background of Dr. Russell and Lao, that the words they have shared with you this afternoon would have even more meaning. When he was 1 year old, he could sit down at the piano and play any piece that he heard played. He is an artist, he is a sculptor, he is an architect, and yet he never went to school to study architecture. One whole street in New York City has been built by him, and I understand something like, and Mrs. Roy Burkhart will be interested in this, something like $60 million worth of building in Florida was done by him as the architect. He has never gone to university. what he has done, he has tuned in to the universal mind. When he was 7 years old, he had his first great awakening of the God mind. And so you've had a chance to not only share Mrs. Russell's spirit, but you've had a chance to catch a little something of the deep spirit of a man of whom Glen Clark said, "Once in my life I've met a man who tapped the secret of the universe." And so on behalf of the Office of the Women Guild and the chairman of the program, Barbara Zartman, I just felt I wanted to come here and give you a little of the background of this couple. I'll be in Virginia next Monday at Broadway, Virginia, about 15 miles from this palace in the hills, and so I'm going to drop in to see where they live. Barbara, do you have anything more you want to say? Eleanor, would you say a word about their books? Where are they? Where will tonight's meeting be? In this room next? Oh, in the Children's Chapel. And tonight at 8 o'clock, Mrs. Russell will speak on what is your title? She will speak tonight on the science of love. Would you like to stand for a moment? Suppose we're silent for just a few seconds. Amen. Now shake hands with at least 6 people, and if you want to, you can come up and shake hands with them.
Good evening.
It's with a regular pleasure that I want to introduce our speakers tonight. As you know, Dr. and Mrs. Russell are from Waynesboro, Virginia. They have a school down there. They have a course of home study. They have many pupils who gather in the summer down there, and we've all been invited to go down. Those of you who heard Mrs. Russell and Dr. Russell this afternoon are in for another treat this evening. Mrs. Russell is going to talk about the science of love. Mrs. Russell.
Oh, this is a double pleasure, twice in one day. I hope you can hear me, can you? I wanted to talk a little bit more this afternoon about the science of love. You know, the world has never really understood what love really means. Love usually is thought of as something of the emotions. But that really is not love. That is one of the effects of love, but it isn't love. Love really means balance, equal giving and re-giving. That is what the world has to learn before we can reach that stage where men and women can live in the peace and happiness that they have always sought from the beginning of time. I shouldn't really say from the beginning of time, because there's always been worlds. This is only one of the worlds. God always has been and always will be. There wasn't a beginning, and there will never be an ending. I think that too is a very wonderful thing to know, because so few people realize that they can never die. there is no such thing as death. We give to life so that life can give to death, and we give to death so that death can give to life. It's merely a repetition, and that is what love means. Giving for re-giving, constantly, forever and ever. That is why we've got to learn what it really means to love. Because to love is to know balance. And that is what we need so sorely in this world today. Balance. That balance can only come when men and women know their true relationship one with the other. I touched on this just a little this afternoon, but I could only touch on it for just a little while, so I'll try and enlarge on that just a little more tonight. You know, mothers and fathers are born to give birth to more mothers and fathers. But it isn't just the physical act of planting the seed to make a baby, as I said this afternoon. Sex interchange goes on forever in every transaction. Everything we do is a sex interchange, because this is a sex-electric universe. Actually, your body that you think of as you, is not really you. It is but the electrical expression of your thinking. You are no more solid than this is solid. You, the eternal you, is not in your body. The eternal you, the immortal you, always has been and always will be. And this one little life is not the end of everything, or the beginning. I'm sure that those of you who are here have been here millions of times before. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here now. Now, there's just a few people in this world that are destined to bring the balance to this world that is necessary for the peace that we are all desiring. Balance. And balance can only come in this world when men and women rule this world equally. To date, we have had a man-powered world. The male is preponderant in the world. Now, men are wonderful. It would be a terrible world without men and without women. But it would be just as terrible a world if women ruled. Maybe it would be a little worse, I don't know. But it would certainly be a dreadful world that was women ruled. But it's just as bad with man rule. From the beginning of time, at least from the beginning of this world that we know, it started millions of years ago in the jungle. Men had to kill. Men had to take life to survive. And for millions of years, they took life to survive. Don't you see how that pattern is all within a man? He feels he still has to kill to survive. We're now facing the greatest killing that we have ever faced in this world. Civilization believes it has unfolded very far. We think we're very highly civilized people, but we're really not. Because as long as man kills man, he's still very much barbaric. Now, you know, it's a very unusual woman who knows a desire to kill. Because women have always given to life. They have given birth, always. they give to life. And so, that is why today we need that balancing in the world of men and women. We need to have women working along with men. We don't want the mannish woman. We don't want the woman who wants to be a man. That is just as bad as the man that wants to be a woman. The greatest asset for a woman is being a woman, so that she can balance with the male. Male and female, everything in the universe is in pairs. And I have noticed that the right kind of man is always the first one to say how right you are. The big man always admits that with the right woman, and I say the right woman, life is perfect. No home is complete without both the mother and the father. Now here we are with a great world home that's only ever had a father. It's never had a mother. Look at the countries where women are suppressed. They are decadent countries. And they will continue to be decadent countries because the woman has never had a voice in the running of the country. I could mention the two countries today that's causing quite a lot of trouble, India and Egypt. I lived not in Egypt, but in India, but in Egypt. I've been through the Sahara Desert in Egypt. I had a wonderful experience in 1938. I was taken right through the Sahara Desert, right through to the coast of El Arish. And I was the first white woman that some of the Arabs there had ever seen. They had never seen a white woman, and the women had never seen a white woman, of course, their wives. There was one old man, terribly old. He had 5 wives. And at this time, I was a strong, healthy-looking white female. And he wanted to trade his 5 wives for me. He said I looked so big and strong that I could do far more work in the fields than his 5 Arab wives. But they were always looking for women to do the work. The women did all of the hard work, all of the physical work. Now, I didn't bring it with me. I intended to bring a prism with me tonight. Brought it all the way from Waynesboro and then didn't bring it here. But if any of you have got a prism, when the moon is full, look through the prism at the moon. And you'll see that one half of the moon is red and the other is blue. But they're absolutely equal. Now, one half of the moon represents the male and the other the female. The blue is the female and the red is the male. But they are absolutely equal. Everything in God's universe, everything is equal, male and female. And that is what we give all through our home study course. We teach that male and female principle that runs through everything. The doctor often says, all that anyone need know is 1 unit of electricity. Now, all of you think of the positive and negative in electricity to get light. But they're both positive, and they're both equal. If you haven't got them equal, then you wouldn't get any light. You must have everything equal and opposite. It's all male and female. God didn't make any mistake when he made the male and female equal and opposite. It goes all through nature, and man and woman being God's highest creation, the highest part of creation. Why have we been so blind down through all of these millions of years to the unbalanced condition that we have of a male preponderant world? Now, if we could get women into government, not politics, we don't want politics. All that we ever need in this universe is God's universal law. When man understands God's laws, he will not need man-made laws. He will not need to police his streets and lock his doors and live in the fear that he lives in today. The greatest product in the world today is fear. Everyone fears. He fears his neighbor. He even fears himself because he does not understand himself. He does not understand his reaction to things, and he feels that he's the only one that is feeling these things. Everyone feels them. I think that's one of the things that we ought to realize about each other. There would be so much more kindness in the world, real kindness in the world, if people would only realize that the other fellow too is looking for happiness. We all want happiness. There isn't a man, woman, or child in this whole world that isn't trying to find happiness and security. Even the gangster is trying to find security in his way. He thinks that if he has a lot of money and possessions, that he will have found security. What he doesn't realize is that in violating the law, he has lost all of the happiness that he's trying to find. Happiness and freedom come from living God's laws. If we would be free and happy, we would live without compromise. There can be no compromise with life. There can be no compromise with God's law. Every time we compromise, we have delayed our unfolding, our soul unfolding. Every man is in the position that he puts himself. It's his decision that puts him where he is. If a person has beauty in their home, it's because they have desired beauty. If a person has security, it's because he has desired security and lived for it and worked for it. When we were coming along the road here, we came through some very drab little towns. And I said to my husband, that represents the people living in that town. They're not progressive. They don't want to make beauty. They're satisfied with ugliness. And they wonder why they're not happy. God's universe is beautiful. Everything here is beautiful. But we have to work for it. We have to work to bring balance to the soil. When you put a seed in the ground, you haven't finished your work. You know, in my book, I think it was, either in the book or the course, I told the story of the farmer, and I'm sure many of you know that story, of the minister that went to see the farmer. And he said, what a wonderful farm you have, how fortunate you have been, how God has blessed you. And the old farmer looked at him and he said, yes, God has blessed me, but you should have seen this farm when God had it by himself. It's working with God. When you put a potato in the ground, you will not get a big crop of potatoes unless you nourish the soil, feed the soil, do everything to make a lovely crop of potatoes, and you will get just as many potatoes as you put service into that soil. But if you don't give the soil any service, you'll dig up a rotten potato, and you'll say, well, God hasn't given me a good crop of potatoes, and everybody will blame God for it. We never blame ourselves. If we find ourselves without love, we say, God, why don't you give me someone to love? Why can't I have love? We can only have the love that we give to the world. If you give love to everyone that you meet, why, you can't keep love away from you. Everybody is looking for someone to love. But first we must give love. That is the greatest lesson in life, to learn how to give. Everything that we give to life is given back to us. Measure for measure. We don't get any more than we put into it. If we want a lot of love, we must give a lot of love. And when I say love, I mean balance. A happy home is a balanced home. And if we would have love, we must have balance in our lives. We must never take more than we give. And whatever we give must come back in like measure. Now, the nourishing of the seed of creation. Man is creation. Sex is creation. When we say that sex is sin, we are in truth denying our Creator, because that is God's way of creation. That is God's way of creating. It's what man does with these things that is wrong. But there's nothing wrong in the most holy law of God, which is mating, we can only procreate through sex. We can only have more fathers and mothers with sex. We can only have beautiful trees, beautiful flowers, through the sex principle. Now, we teach what that sex principle is. The beauty and wonder of God's universe is in His holy law of mating. Sex interchange. Rhythmic, balanced interchange were the 3 words that you will read in the little book about Doctor that Glen wrote when Doctor had his great illumination in 1921. And God said, man needs really but one word. That one word is balance. But if he needs 2 words, it's rhythmic balance. If he needs 3 words, it's rhythmic balanced interchange. Now that is what we have got to have in our world with mothers and fathers. Rhythmic balanced interchange. When men and women can learn the power that comes through rhythmic balanced interchange, we shall have a different world. But the world will not change in the twinkling of an eye, because all people are not ready for that balance. They have to learn the hard way. We've had one war after another. Ever since we've been born, it's been just one war after another, waiting for another war. Now we're waiting for the most dreadful war of all. You'll hear men say, when the next war comes, shall we use the atom bomb? If we use the atom bomb, the other country will use the atom bomb. And it's only fear that is stopping men from doing that now. But we've got to beware, because if another country has nothing to lose, they may still use the atom bomb first. And that is the end of civilization. Now what we have got to do, I was talking of women's role in the world today. It's man and woman's role. Every man and woman here could multiply himself by 100 in a very little time. And that 100 would be multiplied by another 100. If everybody stops and waits for somebody else to do it, it will be too late. There is no time to lose. Every man and woman who understands God's laws have got to extend that knowledge to every other man and woman that he knows. A few years ago, Doctor and I decided that we would try to give this knowledge through slow infiltration, because we knew that the knowledge that we have to give is so far advanced of the mass mind. So we thought we'd better do it that way, but there's no time to do that now. The time is running low, and we've got to do something about it. Everybody's got to do something about it. You know, when Jesus was here, he tried so hard to teach man what love was. But he wasn't given long enough to do his work as he wished to do it. And no one really understood what Jesus was trying to do when he was here. If they had, we would have a different world today. People are not crucified on the cross today when they try to give knowledge to the world, but they are still crucified. Every man and woman in this world who tries to give love, who tries to give knowledge, is crucified by those who do not comprehend, because what man does not understand, he resists. And you will find that every time you try and do some good for somebody, something will happen to you. They will malign you. They will talk about you. They will say you don't understand. But we haven't got time to consider what they say today. We've got to, all of us, try. We have to make everybody else try to do something about it, to bring balance to our unbalanced world. Everyone that has a child should bring that child up with knowledge of who he is and what and what his purpose on earth is. I often say to visitors that come to Swananoa, do you know what your purpose on earth is? And they will look blankly, and in the end I say, well, do you know? No, they don't know. How many people know their purpose on earth? It certainly isn't getting up in the morning and having breakfast and sitting in an office and doing work, or standing in a store and selling things and having lunch and going through all of the mechanics that do things for the body. It isn't dressing the body and dancing the body and washing the body and doing all of the things that we do with our bodies. Life has a much deeper purpose than that. The purpose of our lives is to become aware of the God that lies within each and every man on earth. Every experience we have that leads to the unfolding of that knowledge is good. That's why every experience is good. If we want to have a peace in our time, we've got to do something about it. And the women of the world can help in their way to do a great, great deal today, because they can mother the world. When a child is sick, it usually goes to its mother, doesn't it? It goes there for love and comfort. The world is sick today. The world is very sick. I've traveled all over the world. I've seen misery in the countries that do not understand the ways and processes of God. And it's always been in the countries where the women are suppressed. This country of yours is the most wonderful and the most progressive country in the world, because it was started by men and women. It was men and women who pioneered in this country, and they worked side by side. And the country went far forward. It went farther forward in 150 years than many of the other countries have gone in 3,000 years. But today, life has become easy. Perhaps it's become too easy. We don't go out enough, as I said today, to give money to something. It isn't sufficient. It's got to be more than money that will help this world. It's got to be action. It has to be love in action. which is God in action. When we can learn to give service to our fellow men by bringing knowledge to them, then we are fulfilling our purpose on earth. If people really realized their oneness with each other, they would know their oneness with God. But it's been an abstract statement to date. People will say we are all one. God is love. But they have no idea what it really means to love. If it had been better understood, we certainly would not be in the position that we are in this world today. Industry, I don't know whether any of you here have read our book, The Scientific Answer to Human Relations, but we wrote that book in 1950 or 51. And if the big industries had taken up the plan that was in that book at that time, we should not be having the labor problems that we are having today. We are having labor problems because in the old days, capital exploited labor. We have our domestic problems today. We can't get domestic servants because in the old days, domestic servants were not treated in a balanced manner. They were made to work all the hours of the day and night. Until today, they won't do that work. In Europe today, it's almost impossible to get domestics. As a child, I always used to think, why did they treat domestics in this way when the home was so important? When making a home clean and beautiful was the most important part of man's life. If we had elevated them, we wouldn't be having domestic problems today. The slave has arisen to slay the master. And that is what is happening all over the world. That's why we have capital and labor problems. Now the pendulum has swung the other way. But in the old days, the policy was to get as much work out of people as you could and pay them as little as you could. And that is why we have the problems. If there had been a balanced interchange between capital and labor, we wouldn't be having the problems. We wouldn't be having the trouble in the other countries in the world today. If we had gone into those countries and really taught them how to do the things that we knew how to do them. But we didn't. We went in to exploit those countries. I'm an English woman, and I know what I'm talking about. I know what we did in England, but England is not alone. Every country that went into another country and exploited it is suffering today for what they did then. You've seen England lose one colony after another. It takes time for countries, but the same thing happens in our individual lives. You cannot take happiness from another. You can only take it from yourself. In an individual life, it happens more quickly than to a country. It takes time. But in our own lives, if we take happiness from someone, we ourselves find ourselves unhappy. If a marriage breaks because one party or the other is taking more than he is giving. No marriage will ever break where there's an equal, balanced interchange. Everybody wants to keep a happy marriage. But to have a happy marriage means giving a great deal to each other. It's the same in business. A business is successful. It couldn't help but be successful if value received is given. If you go into a restaurant and you have a good meal and it's worth the money that you pay for it, you go back again. But if you go into a restaurant and you have a poor meal, you don't go back there again. If you have a friend, and your friend continues to take from you more than he gives, the friendship in time breaks. No friendship can stand an unbalanced interchange. That's what we have wrong with our world today. It's so unbalanced because one country has taken more from another country than it has given. England has lost her colonies one after the other because she went into those countries, and while she did a great deal for them, did she do it with the right motive? Has any country ever gone into another country and given to that country with the right motive? They were exploited. They made money from them. Every country that went into another country to make money from that country is losing that country. Every country in the world represents one individual, two individuals, the man and the woman. The world is made up of fathers and mothers, and more fathers and mothers. The world is us. And that is the message that I wanted to leave with you all tonight. That it's our place in the world today to do something about it. If we don't do something about it, we will not have a world much longer.